So, welcome to Transformational Vedic Astrology. My name is Michael Mastro, and today we're going to look at the chart, the Vedic astrology chart for Lee Iacocca, uh, who was born October 15, 1924, at 1700 hours in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And so we're going to be using the sidereal zodiac, which is not the Western form of astrology, which would be the tropical zodiac. Um, and we're going to look and see when he was born. If you look to the eastern horizon, you would see the 12th sign of Pisces rising at 14 degrees. 14 degrees becomes the most effective point of every house. Any planet that's within 5 degrees of that 14 degrees has a lot of impact, like Saturn, Venus. Yeah, so those are the ones that are closest to it. Now, in Transformation Vedic Astrology, we want to look at how the planets are operating, and we'll look at when they're operating and what we could do to fix the chart. So we give a lot of credit to multicona signs, and those multicona signs are 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11. And we say that every house represents some aspect of our life, and wherever you see the multicona signs, like 1, Aries ruled by Mars, these are the houses that we came here in this life to work on. So he's working on wealth and recognition for Aries ruled by Mars, as well as continuation of the marital bond. We see the 4th sign of Cancer ruled by Moon. So he's working on investments, children, education, and creativity. He's working on health and conflict and debts and disputes and legal issues. Leo ruled by the Sun. He's working on Virgo, placed in the 7th house of partnerships, ruled by Mercury. He's working on the 7th sign of Libra, ruled by Venus, in the 8th house. He's working on different ways to solve obstacles or problems. He's working on his career, the 10th house. You see Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, and then in the 12th house you see the 11th sign of Aquarius ruled by Saturn. So he's working on expenses and losses within companies. So turning around those companies that are going through huge losses and expenses. So we know that out of all these 12 houses, the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th houses have a lot of challenges to help us grow. So any multicona sign that falls in those 3 houses becomes functional malefic. So Sun becomes the ruler of the 5th house is Sun. So Sun becomes functional malefic, Venus becomes functional malefic, and Saturn, as well as Rahu and Ketu. So those are the functional malefics. The other planets are like Moon, Mars, Mercury, are all benefic planets. So now we're going to see whether these planets are weak or strong and how they're affecting his chart. So first we'll look at the Sun. Sun is at 29 degrees. So any planet that's more than 25 degrees is said to be in old age, and it cannot protect or promote its own significations. And if it's less than 5 degrees, like Moon, then it's in adolescence, and it also cannot protect or promote its significations. So Sun is weak, it is functional malefic, and it is also afflicted by K2, which is aspecting the Sun. So basically, it's ruling this house of health and conflict, and it's placed in the house of partnerships. So it brings this health and conflict into partnerships. Um, Sun represents father and government, so I guess his father was an immigrant, and he started a restaurant, had a lot of obstacles in the beginning. And then he later got a government bailout for Chrysler, who was failing. This also affects, brings conflict into his relationships, his personal relationships. He had 3 wives, and gives him some good qualities of service and leadership skills and executive and organizational skills. So Moon is at 4 degrees, it's exalted, and I think it's really one of his real strong planets. It's just slightly weak by 1 degree. It is ruling the house of creativity, and it's placed in the house of business and communication. So it's his creativity came through business and communication, and it gave him a really good ability to have good intuition, to be able to advise companies, to consult with companies, to turn around companies, and to give advice on investments. Mars is at 6 degrees. It is ruling the house of wealth, recognition, and the continuation of the marital bond. It's placed in the 12th house. So that brings some his wealth through turning around these failing companies that had a lot of losses and expenses. And it also affects separations in the continuation of the marital bond, or endings to the marital bond. And give innovative ideas. This is hidden talents or ideas. So it gave him great insights as well. Thinking outside the box was a big thing for him, for his success. Mercury is at 22 degrees. It's in its own sign, so that makes it pretty powerful. It is combust, so that makes it a little bit weak. It's close to the sun, within 7 degrees of the sun, so that it makes it a little bit weak. But it rules the house of partnerships and in the house of partnerships. So it gave great communication skills in his partnerships. Very persuasive speech. Now, he died of Parkinson's disease. So a weak Mercury has to do with the nervous system, which is connected with Parkinson's disease. Jupiter is at 23 degrees. It is placed in the ninth house of good fortune and legal issues, and it rules the house of career. So gives good fortune through his career. And Jupiter's expanded vision, thinking outside the box, writing and publishing. And so all of these things contributed to his career success, helping to turn companies around from going under. Venus is at 16 degrees. It is functional malefic, ruling this 8th house of death-like experiences and obstacles, but it gave him great problem-solving abilities. And it also brought, Venus represents wives, so it brought some conflict with his wives as well. So it's placed in the house of conflict. So he had 3 wives. Now, the first wife died, but I think the other 2 were divorces. Saturn is at 10 degrees, and it is ruling the 12th house of separation, losses, expenses, depression, sleep issues, imprisonment, confinement. And it is placed in the house of death-like experiences, obstacles. Again, I think it gave him this ability to think outside the box, to be a good problem solver, to reduce the losses of Chrysler and to help bail out Chrysler. He went to the government to get that bailout money, and was very convincing, and saved the company. And Saturn is service and discipline and focus. He had good work ethic, very disciplined. He gave to a lot of charities. But Saturn also does afflict this house of continuation of the marital bond. Now, Rahu and Ketu are pretty much benign, but they do afflict a couple things. So Ketu afflicts Sun, Rahu afflicts Jupiter, but they're not close to the most effective point. So Rahu is in this house of creativity, a great desire for creativity and investments, and K2 here gives the non-attachment to his material, his income. I think he worked well beyond his retirement age. I think it was more important for him to be involved in this creative ability to help companies than it was about the income. So let's look at the timing of events. In 1960, he became a vice president of Ford. He joined as an engineer and worked his way up. And during a Mars period, Mars is engineering. So he had a lot of innovations in engineering that helped Ford become quite successful and him successful. 64, he launched the Mustang, which was to this day one of Ford's most popular cars, very innovative at that time. And that was during a very expansive Jupiter period for him. He became president also during a Jupiter period, a very expansive time for him. Then he was fired in 1978 during a Saturn period, which would be endings, separation. And then he joined, Saturn's also in this house of death-like experience. So it was a big transformation, and then he got transformed into bailing out Chrysler in 1979, also during a Saturn period. So this is, again, expenses related to turning around the expenses and losses of Chrysler by getting a big loan from the government, which he paid back even earlier than it was expected. In 1984, he wrote an autobiography during a Mercury period. Mercury is about communication, writing, and publishing. In 1995, he was involved with a lawsuit trying to exercise his stock options with Chrysler, who had already, I think, gone under. And that was during a Jupiter period. Jupiter is legal issues. In the house of legal issues, Jupiter represents law, legal issues. In July 2nd of 2019, he died of complications due to Parkinson's disease. This was during a K2 Saturn period. If we look at the transits at that time, here is the transit chart. Outer ring is where the planets were when he died. The inner ring is where the planets were when he was born. So we see that he died during a solar eclipse. That solar eclipse was at Sun and Moon were at 16 degrees, so close to the most effective point, which was 14. Really high impact. Also, K2 afflicting Saturn. Saturn's already malefic. Sun is already malefic. Causing a lot of issues. So Sun is afflicting 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so a lot of affliction going on at close to the most effective point. During an eclipse, it is like death-like experiences. from the beginning of time, there's been eclipses where everything goes into darkness. So huge transition for him into the afterlife. What could we do to improve this chart? This guy was highly successful, probably because of exalted moon and exalted Saturn, and Mars and Mercury also gave him a lot of courage to do innovative designs. But what you could do is transform the malefics with chants and charity. So any kind of chants would be good, but for Sun, listening to Vishnu chants on Sundays and helping those elderly people who cannot help themselves, father-like figures. And for Venus, which is malefic, you could listen to Lakshmi chants on Fridays and help women. And then for Saturn, you could help those who cannot help themselves on Saturdays, as well as listen to Shiva chants. And for Rahu and Ketu, Shiva chants, feeding the birds, helping those who cannot help themselves. K2, helping spiritual organizations and listening to Ganesh chants. And then you would want to go ahead and strengthen all the other weak planets. So wearing a moonstone or pearl, white colors, red colors on Tuesdays, wearing a red coral, Mercury wearing green on Wednesdays, an emerald, and then Jupiter yellow sapphire on Thursdays, yellow colors, or just wearing a kavash, which is a locket containing the Devata yantras for those 4 or 5 planets, would be strengthening that. Thank you for listening to this astrology reading for Lee Iacocca. If you're interested in a reading, you can go to www.vastucreations.com under services. You can get a life reading, a 3-year reading, a yearly reading, compatibility reading, or you can learn how to do Transformation Vedic Astrology and become certified at American Institute of Vastu.com under courses. Thank you for listening, and may Lee Iacocca rest in peace.